because of Kol HaLashon, you should try to make your questions clear of each word. Otherwise, it spoils the impact.
We're talking about that yesterday, that Adam and Eve, they didn't know right or wrong beforehand. And then once they ate, that they realized that they were naked. But you're saying that, I wrote it down from yesterday, so it's a little bit hard for me to remember the point. But before, you were saying that before they ate, they must have obviously had some sort of clue, they had some sort of intention that they knew like what was right or wrong, because how could they be given a mitzvah without having this choice? So they were able to go without clothing and procreate or whatnot without this feeling of guilt. But when the Nachash, it's like it was almost like as if he was more informed than man at this point.
He was the most cunning of all creatures.
Yeah, and why?
That's what it says right there.
Maybe what's the reason for that? That it seemed like the Nachash himself had a better understanding of.
Is that so valid?
To understand more deeply the whole episode of Adam and Eve in paradise, in Gan Eden, that would need many shiurim. I brought this from a way of trying to understand a moral lesson that can be learned from Adam and Eve. Because we do see clearly in the text of the Chumash, of Genesis, that there are aspects of our type of life today which are paralleled by Adam and Eve. Because, let us say, when Eve Chava was created, so it says in Genesis that Adam said, "This is bone from my bone and flesh from my flesh." And then it says afterwards, when they came together, "Al-kei yazov ish et aviv et imo v'davak v'ishto v'ayu lebasar echad." Therefore, a man should cling to his wife, should forsake his father and mother, to cling to his wife, then become one flesh. In other words, there's a lesson mentioned there for us today. So let's compare all this to today. And we also, at every wedding celebration, we do say, please Hashem, in the Sheva Brachot, Sameach T'samach Re'im Havim, T'samech Yitzircha B'gan Eden Mikerem, give joy to the Chatan and the Kala, to the bride and the bridegroom, like you gave joy to the couple who were in the Garden of Eden. So we see, even in Jewish lifestyle, we do take a model from Adam and Eve. So with regard to marriage, or with regard to procreation. Now similarly, with regard to the deeper question, it is clear that it says that Hashem created man and woman, dust from the earth, and He breathed into them the breath of life, and this became, in man and woman, a living soul. So here we have a description of the creation of the human species, not just of Adam and Eve, on a higher level in all the animal world. The implication is that as far as the physical aspect of the human being is concerned, it's made up of minerals. And the minerals which make part of the body In fact, I saw in one of the books you got here as well, in the Jewish Faith by Dr. Epstein. It's a good introduction to understand the Jewish faith from a modern point of view. So there he brings down, that our behavior is to treat the human being today also by describing him from his biochemical elements that make up the physical aspect of the human being. And these biochemical elements, it says that one of the people said, well, if you're going to reduce it to that, you can go into a drugstore and you can buy all these minerals, for, let's say, for $100. So you're going to say that's how you reduce the human being. It's true, the human starts from the earth, it's made of biochemical minerals. Only these minerals also follow an animalistic level. So if you look at it, it's like the animals. The animals, you can also reduce them to the mineral aspect, but they also have life powers. But the life powers are materialistic life powers, physiological powers. And those physiological powers exist also in the human being. And therefore the reductionists, the materialist aspect of the human being, which is really not what Darwin intended so much, but still that's how Darwinism was used in the last centuries. And that human beings is really just an evolution from the level of the animals, the mammals, the higher mammals. Only it's got a higher intelligence than they have. Well, that says in the Chumash it's different. Because it says, about the animal world, it also says, it's also a living soul, but it's an animalistic soul. And the human being was given a divine soul. So it says, breathed into him, nishmat chayim. Nishmat does not just mean breath, it also means the soul. So it says, part of Hashem's essence of being above every aspect of the material world, being creative, was given the human being. And where do we find it at its highest level? In the human conscience. The human conscience we come straight away to present day, almost contemporary great psychologists. Everyone knows about Viktor Frankl's book on logotherapy, and the central aspect of having search for meaning in the human being, but his greater work, which he came to after further studies in the post-Holocaust period in his life, he wrote a book called The Unconscious God. And there he goes back to true biblical teaching. And in fact, the true biblical teaching is interesting, which is expounded upon at a deep level by the Maral of Prague. So when I got his book, I had emailed correspondence with him, I wrote to him that it's interesting that the way you develop the concept of the unconscious God and the human conscience, and that is a big power in the human being, the highest power. So he wrote back to me, well, he's descended from the Maral. He came back also to an aspect of Jewish observance, starting tefillin, although he was raised in a completely non-Torah environment. But he came through the Holocaust and his deeper experiences, he came to these conclusions, and which are also developed by others as well. A similar approach is adopted by, he was the professor of psychiatry at Sorbonne University, and also Baal Teshuva, a very great psychologist and psychiatrist. Professor Amdi Baruch, who also wrote books in a similar manner. And the moral streak within the human being is the essence of the image of God. Or as we say in the morning, Shamishtat B'Tori Ata Brata, you, God, have given us, as it were, a divine power inside ourselves as the human soul, and exists in every human being. And it also existed Adam and Chava when they were created. And because of this, they had a conscience. And the question arises, if we're going to relate it to our present-day lifestyle, what we know of human beings today, how do we relate this today to the question of Adam and Eve being given commandments, and the working commandments, I'm not going to deeply now, but the commandment concerning not to eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil contains in that verse, as is described in the oral tradition, the Noachide code. Without, say to some extent, without the prohibition of theft, because everything at that time was given over to them if they would recognize God. But still, the potential, the idea of the Noachide code, the potential of following a moral lifestyle. That's the basis of the moral code. And the moral lifestyle exists in the human conscience, and in one way or another. So then the question is, what's the difference between the tree of, what was the, if you go into the concept, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, the implication is before they didn't have that knowledge. Only when the serpent came. What's the serpent represent? The sages say the Nachash is just a personification of the evil inclination. So they also had an evil inclination. If they wouldn't have the evil inclination, then how could they sin? Only the essence of the human being is that conscience only applies if you've got a good inclination, evil inclination. Then you can choose. Then you have choice, and then you can be creative and make sure that you follow virtue instead of vice, which goes all the way through the Bible, through the Tanakh. So the question is, what did the eating from this tree change? Beforehand, that freedom of choice. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense that we're given commandments and we're punished, if we're going to relate it to our concept. So therefore, this is a question which the Rambam deals with in Guide for the Perplexed. And his answer is that beforehand they had knowledge of the difference in truth and falsehood. But once they ate from the tree, which they ate from the Nachash, it says, was winding itself round that tree, and it tempted Chava. So what was the difference before? They also had it, after they also had it. That's the answer given by the Rambam. Now, I think sometimes you can explain the philosophical explanation of the Rambam, and of course of all the great Jewish philosophers who dealt with things from a rational point of view, in order also to make it acceptable to both to any human being of high intellect, but also to many Jews of high intellect who had absorbed Aristotelian philosophy, which in the Middle Ages was considered like science today. In other words, the Jews were great scientists, and they used to be amongst the main translators of Greek and Latin works into Arabic. So therefore, they were great philosophers amongst the Muslims in the time of the Rambam. And in order to clarify things, the Rambam in the Moreh Nevuchim, some people call it today Nevuchat HaMoreh, Moreh Guide for the Perplexed. Some say it's the perplexity of the guides, because a person approaching the Moreh Nevuchim without any background in, let's say, in philosophy or medieval science, it can confuse you. Because we look things a bit different. We live already in the post-Aristotelian era. Even someone who's educated in high school, and some even university, will not find it answering all their questions. But if you look at it in a deeper manner, the answers that Rambam gives, we can perhaps understand it more easily if we go to the works of the Kabbalah. Because the Kabbalah is really a deeper philosophy of the Torah, given in esoteric terms. So according to the Kabbalah, also the Midrashim also imply this. The Nachash, the serpent, represents the power of the evil inclination. The serpent, which was winding itself round the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. what does it represent? It represents the power of evil in the garden, in the paradise. And what happened? Adam and Eve were told, don't go near that tree. The Nachash is there, it's in the garden, and you should know there is the evil inclination, but keep away from it. But if you get near it, and you're going to listen to its enticements, then the poison will enter into your system. And then instead of just having a knowledge of truth and falsehood, you will have an experience, an experience of evil. And once you have the experience of evil, you get cravings. And then life will be a constant struggle. But if you keep it at bay, you feel harmony. The human beings were made to feel, to put it into our, since we say marriage, for example, is described in Jewish observance as entering Gan Eden, you want marriage to be a real paradise, then you have to follow the highest level of love. Love of human beings, love from the family should spread, love of one's wife, love of the family should spread to become love of the fellow human being, also get an image of God. It's got to lead to love of Hashem. If you're going to follow a path of love, that means complete dedication to virtue, then your life will be a knowledge, an objective knowledge between truth and falsehood, morally speaking, without having to experience evil. But if you say, I'd like to experience evil, even to try it out, and in fact they say, how did Adam and Rishon want to say, yeah, let me be tempted and I'll be able to overcome it. Hashem said, no, don't try it. That is how this is described in Midrashim. So Chava said, let me try it out. Why not try it out? So it's very similar to the occasion. Let's speak about my own experience. Yeah, but it's a good illustration. Today, what I see around me, I keep away from drugs under all circumstances. I even, for my own self, even keep away from smoking. I run away from it. I don't have any temptation, not the slightest. Yeah. But I know if I will try and take drugs, I might get a craving for them as well. In fact, when I used to give talks against drug addiction, which is quite widespread amongst students in general, and Jewish students in particular, so I still remember I gave a talk here at the Hebrew University to the Jewish students about drug addiction. This is going back a few decades. It was quite strong and affected also even yeshiva students. So, and when I spoke about all its evils, bringing statistics and so on, how it ruins the brain, and how it ruins family life, and how it ruins any type of creative activity, and how, in fact, there was even a case, unfortunately, in Hanau, a case of a drug addict who died as a result, taking severe drugs, caused his death. So when I used to speak against it, when I spoke at that talk in Hebrew University, says the student says in the middle of the lecture, he says, listen, you're talking about the evils, but have you experienced the what they call it? Evil gave it a special name.
Euphoria.
Huh?
Euphoria.
More than euphoria. No, you get psychedelic. Have you ever experienced psychedelic trip? You know, to go into the higher joys,
No, I usually fly down.
trances. Have you ever had these things?
No, I usually fly down.
That's what drugs can bring you to. It's very good. And also, let's say if you've got to work very, very hard to pass an examination, and for months you didn't know much preparation, then you say to yourself, well, there's certain drugs I can take that'll give me greater strength to be able to do without sleep for a few days.
Very good.
So it's very good. So I said, do you ever try it out? I said, no. Why? Because if I try it out, I might get a craving. But now I know, if you makes an objective survey of the whole situation, he looks at it as something, he knows it's so evil that it is stupid. It's stupid of a person to try that, then you get the craving. So Adam and Chava were able to remain in the paradise of Gan Eden, and so will every human being, every human couple, every family, if they train themselves to become inhibited against it. Like in our society, we're inhibited, in our society, I'm talking about our lifestyle. Even if we come from all different cultures, but in our lifestyle, we haven't dropped to the level that we engage in rape, or engage in burglary, engage in stealing. These are things out of bounds, and therefore they don't tempt us. And that is to know the difference between truth and falsehood on the moral level. We don't feel a temptation. Where do we feel a temptation? In other areas. Let's say the area of anger. Very, very few of us are freed from anger totally. And some people, if they're provoked in a different way, provoked very strongly, it gets angry. Although anger, if you look at it objectively, the person knows that anger creates ulcers and makes a person sick and wastes his time and causes his mind to go off the important challenges that face us. Instead of that, he's brooding on the anger and thinking, how can he express it? And then it can ruin us. Then we have to work on it. Or pride, or haughtiness, they're all different qualities we have to work on. Adam and Chava, they were created in such a manner, b'dmut Elokim, that they were above it all. They knew different. So therefore, we see, that was what the explanation of the difference between Yediat Tovara, and that's what the Rambam means. The Nachash was outside the Garden of Eden, out the bounds from Adam and Chava. That's the Yetzer Hara is outside, like it is with us in certain matters. They're inhibited against it. But when they taste it, then it enters into their system. And so that's why there's difference of opinion. What fruit was it? So there's even deep interpretation of the sages. Some say it was a fig because of the fig leaf, maybe because that's also reference to sexuality. Others say it was the vine, which is substance abuse. The person drinks it. If you drink in measure, it's fine. If you drink a bit more, then once you become drunk, you taste the sweetness of being in a drunken state. It's already a bit of allowing the substance abuse to enter into your conflict area. Question is the human being in his inner life in constant conflict, and has constant complexes that need to be solved, or can he get, in certain areas in any case, get out of it and feel the sweetness of a life filled with love? And that is the challenge which lies before us. And that's why we say it begins, love, where can you experience the power of love and throw out any aspects of discord and hate? Where does it start? It starts in marriage, in the home, in the family. And then from there it can spread to the nation. From the nation it can spread to the world. So that's what we're hoping for, that we'll reach such a level. Any other questions?
Yes.
Yes.
It said you may eat of the fruit of all the trees. What is the essence and substance of each one of these other trees that they could eat? What was in them? The other trees.
All the pleasures of the world. representing Hashem has created a beautiful world with physical pleasures, aesthetic pleasures, intellectual pleasures. They all bring, there's no great one, in a certain way there's no greater pleasure than reaching the highest level of loving kindness to others, and to feel the pleasure of giving instead of the pleasure of taking. So a person is, let's say, addicted to giving. That's a pleasure where Hashem says, go ahead, like Avraham Avinu. But even that, you've got to measure it. In other words, you've got to recognize that you've been given in this world, the worlds we know today, a limited time period of life, and therefore we have to, as it says at the end of the Chumash, Nishmatem or Nafshetechem, you've got to look carefully after your souls, and that's mentioned together with the giving of the Torah. You should never forget the Torah which Hashem gave. The Torah Hashem gave is a Torah of balance, to create the right balance. That means you've got to do chesed, love and kindness, but there's also a limit to it. Let's say in the debate between Hashem and Avraham Avinu, who was the one who pursued love and kindness all his life, but he had to admit that you've got to combine loving kindness and charity with justice. And therefore, Im Avram agreed, if there isn't a Sodom and Gomorrah, which was a society addicted to self-centered rejection of loving kindness, the exact opposite of Avraham Avinu, that if there's not even 10 people who are innocent of these crimes to strangers and to concepts of kindness, and they go in the opposite direction of cruelty and evil to others. If you don't have 10 people, then you don't have the nucleus of a society that can remove this evil from the world. And therefore Hashem said, and Abraham agreed, that he began by saying, surely you will do, if there are good people there, even though they're innocent people, even though they don't do anything very much, but they're innocent of these crimes, are you going to destroy them? Destroy them all? Destroy the city is not right. And Hashem agreed. But he said, if there aren't 10, then Avraham agreed. Because the derech Hashem is asot tzedakah umishpat. You've got to do charity, but there's a limit. Let's put it today as well. There are very good-minded people who say we've got to always look at the good side, people who, because of their social situation, and because of all the propaganda that's gone into their minds and their hearts, so they go around and they kill people, but you want to give them a prison sentence, but let them be able to in prison, give them good conditions, and let them go out after a couple of years, even if they haven't given up their ideas. Because you've got to show kindness even to criminals. And then so you're going overboard. It's not justice. It's not justice. People who want to continue murdering should be let out of prison. But there are some people who mean it well. They're well-meaning people. The extreme liberals who criticize, even if a person comes to murder you, they say turn the other cheek and so on. So they mean it well. Yeah. They don't believe in violence under these circumstances, but they're misguided. So it has to have a limit. So everything in life, you've got to follow the right balance, which is given by Hashem. That's why the human conscience is very subjective, and we are led in all different directions through the emotions and all the social pressures. That's why we require the revelation of Hashem to give us the right balance, as it says. And we say to Kirsh Malamita, if you listen to the voice of Hashem, And it says, "V'azanta le'mitzvotav v'shemata," and you follow his ways. The ways of Hashem are the ways of reaching saintliness and loving kindness. Those ways of Hashem. But it also says, "V'azanta le'mitzvotav." The mitzvot create a balance. You've got to have the right objective balance, which is given to us in the Torah, in order to purify the conscience and allow the conscience to be balanced in all directions. That's what Shlomo Melech says, don't be too righteous, over righteous. You think I'm being over righteous, I'm going to very find the direction of righteousness and kindness to others, but you can overdo it as well. And the Torah gives us the right channel, the right limitations in all directions. Just like in the human body, the same thing. A person says, "Oh, I want to spend all my time learning and doing good to others, so I'm going to limit my sleep," and then he only sleeps for 3 hours or 24 hours. And then after a few days, his body doesn't work anymore, he can't do anything, and other people have to look after him. So that's why the sages say, if someone to be extravagant with his income, he shouldn't give more than a fifth, generally speaking, because Hashem says, if you want to keep on giving, don't give everything away, become a person who's got no money, you have to go around begging others. So what, because it's used. There are some monks and so on who go around begging to others, and they themselves all the time give. They want to always be without money. But that way you can't build a family. The person is responsible for his family, responsible for his own body, to Hashem. And therefore, he's not allowed to neglect his basic physical needs. So,
I have a question.
Yes.
Going back to giving people illicit drugs.
Yes.
So what's wrong with creating a degenerate society where people are on all sorts of illicit drugs and keeping them away from what is being normal? Because we started off when I arrived here talking about different medicines that help the brain in biochemical ways. But back 100 to 200 years ago, before the advent of doctors to provide what was known as proper medicines, well, how did they deal with them? People had to self-medicate themselves.
Look, maybe we'll not so clear to me what is your actual question. So maybe let's just spend a few minutes, because this is supposed to be ways of reasoning we're dealing with.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, reasoning, which we find developed, as we explained, especially in the oral tradition, that's very important. But we also need reasoning to use that mental faculty to investigate and know how to apply the laws of the Torah, and which are written in the text of the Chumash, but which are explained orally through our traditions. So I'd like just to give you here, yesterday we did page 22, today we'll go over to page 24, just to go over this briefly. Here, a few more pages. So what it says, like this, just the end of page 23, we referred to two types, it says, of discussion that take place. That Yesh Nasu Vanatnu Rabin Be'echad Min Anil. There are situations in the Gemara where there are many scholars that discuss questions. One person raises a question, the next one answers it, and then we have page 24. You have
sharing is caring.
the top of the page. There are some where the Gemara itself, without mentioning who it was, but you'll find there are many instances in the Talmudical discussions where there is an anomaly. It doesn't say who, it just brings the one who edited the Gemara, brings a question, an answer. In other words, it was a debate of the many. In that manner. There are some v'yesh she'omar hashas b'firush. Some of the instances where it says, Hu motiv lav or mefarek lav. The same person asked a question to himself and then gave the answer. You know, if any of you have read the biography of Rabbi Elyashiv, who had the privilege to be very close with him and had many personal discussions, and also when he was even over 100, I attended his shiur quite often, which he gave with youthful vigor and also humor. No, it's quite well known that he used to often learn in the Beit Midrash by himself, but people came to the door and apparently he was having a discussion with someone else. Because his method of learning was generally to ask questions himself, to himself, and answer them. In other words, the concept of being a questioning person is basic to the Torah. In fact, I think there was once a competition of the major Jewish paper in England, Jewish Chronicle, sending an essay called The Persistent Questioner. I think that was my first essay that I had published. A person got to be a persistent questioner in order to develop his mind. If you keep on asking questions, it's very good. Except, you know, you shouldn't, doesn't mean to say you should ignore what it says in Pirkei Avot. First listen to what the person is saying, and then ask a question. But you've got to be a persistent question in your own mind to find out, you know, am I really reaching the truth? Anyway, it said, all these different forms of a debate, they lead to one result. A way of clarifying truth of any matter, to bring the various angles of the claims, one confronting the other. And solving the question that a person will ask against somebody else's statement, the question that a person will ask on his own assumption. In other words, a person should not become biased to what he thought. A person can be put forward a certain idea and he thinks, oh, that's 100% correct. Then afterwards he finds something that seems to contradict it. The person should have an open enough mind to consider that which contradicts it in an objective fashion. Because we all, as it were, biased to our past. Even the past, I've declared a certain point of view, I always said 100% and so on, and then a question arises in my own mind, or somebody else brings a question against it. I may have to consider, did I say what was right? In the Gemara there's the instance of Rabbi Akiva used to explain every aleph taf in the Chumash, et. What does et come for? He said every word comes with a big purpose. We know the word et is the sign of the relationship between the subject and the object. And if you're going to say that Adam nashach kelev in Hebrew, man bit Adam nashach kelev. That's where you said the dog bit the man. But it could also mean the man bit the dog. How would you express the difference? If you put it, Adam nashach kelev, man bites dog. So what, in Hebrew, you can put the verb afterwards. Therefore, you can put, when you really mean the dog bites man, in Hebrew it's Adam nashach kelev. How can you tell who bit whom? Did the man bite the dog? And the dog
Whoever has the bite mark, that's it.
The
The et changes it.
אדם
So the et,
נשך את הכלב.
כן, כן. או הכלב נשך, או אדם, כן, את האדם נשך כלב. You could even have such a construction. It's not the simple one. Et Adam nashach kelev. This man, the dog bit him. So the et is that which is the difference. The aleph and the taf, because also aleph is the first letter, taf is the last letter. That's subject and that's object. So therefore, the word et is to teach us that distinction. So that's why Bereshit bara Elokim et hashamayim v'et haaretz. So also this, in the Septuagint it puts God first. Bereshit bara Elokim. The Septuagint says, well, we have to put God first. God created the heavens and the earth. Also, nearly all English translations say in the beginning. God created heaven and earth in the beginning. But you've got to put God first. But here, when he said, bara, say created, so he said, bara, Bereshit bara Elokim. So people say, what do you mean, Bereshit created God? Otherwise, there's an ambiguity. So therefore, Rabbi Akiva said that the et comes to include something. He came to a pasuk where he couldn't find anything to include et. Because it says, et Hashem Elokecha tira, you should love Hashem. So, but how can you have anything that is put together with God, et Elokim? So he stopped up giving the drash. And they said to him, just like you received reward for all the drashot, I'll now receive reward for giving up my concept. So in other words, you've got to be ready to give up your interpretation if you think objectively. Don't be influenced by your past statements. And also, the answer that is given to answer questions. No difference whether it's his own question or the questions given by somebody else. All other aspects of dialectical logic discussed in the Gemara. You don't look at the person who said it. You've got to look, even if the smallest disciple says it. Person, in other words, in other matters, ignorant, but you've got to look at the claim. You've got to look at Atanot, the subject matter on its own merit. Okay. Stop it.
Yes, you